Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Immigration Talk Show. I'm Nipasa, and I'm going to be your host for this session. So, thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. And if you think that this episode is going to be helpful for your loved ones and your folks out there who could benefit, especially with today's discussion, please do not forget to share this link with them. And they can join us, they can watch us, they can even ask their questions if they have any, because we're going to have a very esteemed immigration attorney who's going to join us and will be very happy to give you the answers. But before we head on to welcoming our guest for today, I have this very important disclaimer. And that is, by watching our videos, you agree and understand that the information provided by our experts and attorneys, including comments and replies from users, is not legal advice. Use of information is at your own risk. So I hope that you'll keep that in mind and feel free to join us. And you can do that by commenting wherever you're watching. We are live right now on YouTube, LinkedIn, and also on Facebook and on X. Check us out and do not forget to connect with us also, follow us, subscribe to our channel at Immigration Talk Show. That's our handle. And also, you can check us out. We are on Instagram. So join us, friends. And that said, today's discussion is going to be on what legal protections do international students have at US borders. Yes, students are really facing a lot of situations right now, I would say, with their CVIS, and also some of their visas are being revoked. We'll discuss all of that. And, to join us in this discussion today, it's my honor and a pleasure to, welcome one of Canada's top immigration minds, none other than David LP Garson, with over 30 years of experience. David is the managing partner at Garson Immigration Law and is certified as a specialist in immigration law by the Law Society of Ontario. So, yes, recognized by the international who's who of corporate immigration lawyers as one of the top 10 most highly regarded immigration attorneys in Canada. David brings unmatched insight into cross border business immigration as well. And he has advised everyone of multinational tech giants to senior executives and is a past chair of both the Canadian and American Immigration Lawyers Association. So, really very honored to have you with us today. Welcome, David, once again. How are you doing today?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Always a pleasure. I mean, we met last year. So much has happened since we last met in
I would
November.
say so. I think that's an understatement. Yeah.
So true. Every day we are waking up to new updates, new rules, and things to keep in mind. So David is going to help us, with most of our questions today. I have some, and I'm hoping that viewers out there watching us are also going to drop their questions, since we are lucky to have David with us now for an hour. So, David, what would you like to tell folks out there? What can they expect in today's discussion?
Well, I think obviously there's been a lot of media with regard to everything that's been going on. It has become far more, um, I guess, prevalent in the sense of you see stories all the time of people that are going to the port of entry. They're having issues at the port of entry. Um, a lot of it is certainly true, and a lot of it is, I think, generated a bit of anxiety and nervousness. So I think what we want to discuss or go through is, okay, so what's true and what isn't true, what's happening and what's not happening. Certainly there's headlines every single day as to what immigrants and non-immigrants are facing, not only at the port of entry but when they're inside the United States, and things of the sort. So I think that we have to look at this kind of carefully, and we have to understand that while things have changed, certainly it isn't the same as it was a few months ago under the previous administration. I don't think anybody would acknowledge that that's the case. But at the same time, is it quite so severe as we are seeing now? So I think that's what we have to talk about, and we have to take a look at.
Today. And friends, stay with us. We are going to, discuss all of this. In fact, with all these news, with the 300 students and having their CVIS terminated, it's crazy, having a normal day and getting sort of shock like this news. So I'm sure it's going to be interesting what we have. And, to help us out with our questions, I have this first question to you, David. If you could tell us what basic rights do international students have, when especially they arrive at the US airport or the border.
Unfortunately, a student is a non-immigrant going to the United States. So any non-immigrant who's trying to enter the United States and is not a green card holder or a citizen doesn't have a lot of rights. You can't really avail yourself of the Constitution and say, here I am protected under this section or that section. So if you're a non-immigrant, a student or a worker or anyone, a visitor, and you're at a U.S. port of entry, an airport or a land port, then your rights aren't very fulsome. So an officer at a port of entry can question you and discuss why you're there, what you're doing, what your paperwork is in all of that situation. And people say, well, do I have to answer? Well, yes, you do, if you want to try to gain entry to the United States. If you don't answer and you say, I refuse to answer that, or I'm not going to do this, then of course you are subject to removal and not being let into the United States. So, long-winded answer to your question, what rights does a student have? Not a lot. I mean, you in a polite way can request to clarification. If you think that things are going badly, you can ask for forbearance or patience. You can try to speak to the officer and determine why things are going this way or what can be done to rectify that situation. But in terms of availing yourself of, a law or the Constitution, unfortunately, not a lot.
Okay, so I think there's not much, but it's always best to stay informed. I think knowledge is power in this case, especially when you talk about immigration. It's always good to stay updated because things are changing and we have to adapt every day.
And
So,
I think it's important to self-assess too before you go to a port of entry, right? You have to self-assess your risk. You have to take a look at, okay, well, this is what I've been involved in, or this is what I've been saying, or this is me on social media. And so before you go to a port of entry, you have to take a look at that and say, well, am I putting myself in a position where if somebody looks at my social media or looks at my tweets or, you know, in where I've been, am I going to have a problem? I think this is such a shock to the system because this has not happened before in this type of numbers per se. I mean, there's always been people who've come to ports of entry and been refused entry to the United States. I mean, that happens daily, hourly, wherever it is. But I don't know that this has happened to such an extent, or certainly the media hasn't publicized this as happening to such an extent. So it is a very popular topic. And that being the case, when somebody goes to a port of entry, especially now, and they know that they've been doing things or saying things or being involved in things that the US would consider to be anti-nationalistic or anti-US, then you have to take a step back and assess, okay, so what could happen to me at the port? And is this a good idea for me to travel at this time?
yes, I mean, I hear so many immigration attorneys saying it's best to not travel right now. If you're in the US, stay in the US and stuff like that.
Well, that's an interesting point. We know that there have been many students who got emails from the Department of State recently who basically who asked them to self-deport based on previous activities or minor criminality or things of the sort. So being in the U.S. doesn't necessarily help you either. If depends what you've been up to. But to your point, if you don't need to travel, then outside of the US, then probably not the best plan to travel in that regard. That being said, if you're a student who's going to school and you're in the US to study and you haven't been doing anything that would be considered untoward, then you shouldn't come, and your F1 is still valid, and nobody has sent you an email to self-deport, then you should be fine. I mean, you really should. I mean, I suppose any officer at any port of entry can give you a hard time, as they could, but I don't know that they would. I mean, we still have to consider that there's probably 1 million people or so traveling to the United States on a weekly basis, and the CBP doesn't have time to be obstreperous or stop people from going in, for frankly speaking, for the sake of it. So I think you do have to, as I say, look at this in that if you don't have to travel, maybe not a great idea to travel. But if there is something you need to go to, then I think that as long as, going back to our self-assessment again, as long as you are satisfied that, you know what, I'm here to study, I'm in my whatever STEM field or medical field or whatever you're doing, and I'm too busy to get involved in anything that I shouldn't, then I don't know that travel would be a problem.
Yes, yes, very true. Very well put, I would say, David. Thank you so much. So, and also, about social media, like we were speaking, many are advised to also deactivate or even delete their accounts. So, that's it. Because, nowadays, social media has become everybody's part of life. They wake up to that, they put an update with everything. So, I think nobody thought that it would, come back at them so soon like this.
I think you also have to be careful too in your social media on a certain way. If you wipe everything, I know there are people saying, okay, well, bring a burner phone to the port of entry, or
Yeah.
wipe all your phone, the social media in your phone, or wipe your phone. I think that's going to raise a lot of questions if you do something like
Yes,
that.
it's going to
If you
raise suspicion.
Exactly, if you go to a port and they look at a phone, there's nothing on it. All of a sudden, the officer's going to go, wait a minute, what are you hiding? Right? Like what's going on here? That's odd. I mean, look, I'm an old man. If you look at my phone, I have a bunch of stuff on my phone. It's not it would bore you to death, but there's a bunch of
Yeah.
stuff on the phone. But if I show up at this point with a phone that has nothing on it,
What
they're going to
happened?
think
Yeah.
bad thoughts. Exactly. Yeah.
True, very true. Yes, that's it. Folks out there, thank you so much for joining us. I do hope that you're enjoying this content and are able to, resonate. Do not forget to subscribe to our channel. Our handle is at Immigration Talk Show. Also, yes, like, share, and subscribe to our content. Hit that bell icon so that whenever we have, discussions like these, you're also notified and can join us by participating. Also, you can ask your questions, you can even contact attorney David Garson here. So also you can join us on call. You can call in this number, where you can call in is 425-436-6335, and the access code is 988-888. Okay, so David, I have more questions, and if you could
Sure.
also help me with a few answers, as in, like, even if with a valid F1 visa, can a
Mhm.
student still be turned away at the airport? And if so, why would that happen?
So, yes, the port of entry has ultimate responsibility for entry to the United States. So anybody can be turned away. So, for instance, people can get I'm a Canadian, and as a Canadian, for example, I don't need a visa from a consulate. So I could go to a border. I could say I'm applying for an F1. I have my I-20. I'm going. Can you give me the status? And they can say yes, or they can say no. I can go to a consulate if I'm not a Canadian and I need to get a visa, and I go to the consulate, and the consulate issues the visa, and then I travel to the port of entry. But ultimately, it is the port of entry that has final decision-making power. Okay, so the U.S. immigration is run by several different departments of government. The consulates are run by the State Department. The port of entry is run by the Department of Homeland Security. If you file at a service center, it's USCIS. I mean, it's still under the Department of Homeland Security, but there's the Department of Labor. I mean, there's different organizations that have different purviews. So if you go to a port and you say, okay, I have a visa, whether it be an F1 or an H1 or any other kind of visa, and the port can say, sure, more often than not, they're going to let you in, right? You just got the visa from the consulate. Everything seems to be fine. Consulate was satisfied. You're attending the school you said you're attending, satisfied that your documents are in order. But when you get to a port of entry, that officer can ask a lot of questions. They can ask questions about where you've been. They can ask questions about what you do. They can ask questions about what are you studying? What clubs do you belong to? What are you interested in? They could ask to see your phone. They could ask to look through your computer. So they can ask all of these questions, and during that time, they may come up with something that they find is either, in their view, makes you inadmissible, or a possible problem, or expressing anti-US sentiment. And if they see this, then yes, they can stop you. They can put you, if they want, into detention, or they could turn you around where you would have to leave. So ultimately, yes. Again, long-winded answer to your question, but the port of entry can absolutely stop you from entering, and they can cancel your visa at the port as well if they want to.
Yes. I think what we need to do is raise no suspicion at all. You have to give them the idea that, what you're telling them you're going to be in the US for, you have to do, come here to just do that. Nothing else. I mean, even you may be
That's
passionate about
exactly.
Korean. Yeah.
I mean, that's the debate, right? We can sit here and discuss this, but the absolute debate on this is, you're a student. You've had to go to great lengths to get that student visa. It's not easy to get a student visa to the United States, right? I mean, you have to prove temporary intent. You have to prove you have the funds available. You have to have been accepted at an institution that is notable and is able to issue an I-20. It's expensive to travel to the US. It's expensive to live in the US. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that goes into getting a student visa. And a lot of people want to get student visas to go to the United States because they think that will help them in their life and their career. And certainly there's no shortage of people who are applying. So as you're saying, I think you owe it to yourself to make sure that if you're going, that you're going for the reasons that the US intends you to go for. The debate is free speech, right? The debate is that are you able to say what you want and do what you want? You're a person, you're entitled to have the ability to speak out on causes that are near to your heart. But you have to temper that, and I'm going to be practical here. Okay, this is a sort of a practical look at it. You have to temper that to the knowledge that you are not a US citizen or green card holder, and therefore you have gotten permission to go to the United States and to go to school. So with that permission, the US would argue you have responsibility. And the responsibility is to abide by their terms and conditions. Meaning, you want to come in here and study? Great, we're happy to have you. That being said, you have to play nicely with how we want you to play. And I appreciate that there are many people who find that wrong or annoying or stifling, but it's not a case where you're on equal footing here. It's a case where, again, you're asking permission to do something. And whenever you ask permission from someone to do something, you know what? You have to abide by
Yes.
the rules.
Exactly. You have to prove that you are worth it. I mean, why you ask that permission for, that you're allowed. So why do anything otherwise, right? So I
Hmm.
think we have to respect both I mean, we have to respect their decision that they have allowed you to come in to study. So just do that. And David, I would also like to know, there in Canada as well, are you facing anything in the borders, anything with regard to students you want to tell us?
It's interesting. I think that there are many people. It's an interesting time. I've never seen a time like this. I'm dual license. I'm licensed in Canada and the United States. So I see people coming to Canada and I see people going to the US. And
Yes.
it's an interesting dichotomy. It's an interesting comparison because the people going to the US are going, and a lot of Canadians want to go to the US. I mean, since the election in our office, our inquiries to go to the US has tripled, because a lot of people are attracted to the sense of maybe capitalism and ability to get further ahead in the United States. And at the same time, you have people in the United States who are unsure about themselves there, and so they want to come to Canada. They feel that it may be easier for them in terms of the life they want to live. So we have seen people wanting to come to Canada to go to school, or people wanting to come to Canada to work or stay. Um, there was a case, I think, and I don't know much about it, and I'm going to even talk, it's kind of hearsay, but there was a lady at Columbia university or was quote unquote self-deported to Canada, meaning she doesn't have status in Canada, but came to Canada to avoid having issues with ICE in the United States. So you do see incidences of people who will come to Canada to try to avoid what they think may be problems for them in the US. That being said, Canada is well aware of that. And with the issue of tariffs and some combustibility between the two nations right now, I think Canada's being careful not to roll out a welcome mat, in the sense that, first of all, we have our own issues with regard to our economy and our ability to house people and all that kind of thing. And our immigration system has been severely problemed. I don't think that's a word, but I'm going to use it, for a number of years. Has had severe problems. How about that? For a number of years. And so I think people would want to say they want to come to Canada, but I think in Canada, the public may not have an appetite to take many more people in that regard.
Okay, that's very interesting. Like you said, it's a very interesting time because there's just so much happening, right? I think
Yeah.
it's not like any other boring day. It's not like a day is repeating again. Every day
Mm-hmm.
is new with so many updates. So, yes, thank you, David. And well, let's go on with our questions. We got more. So, what actually happens during secondary inspection, and how should students handle that situation calmly and safely?
So in terms of secondary inspection, so what happens is that if you come to a port of entry and they have issues regarding you and your entry, they will send you to secondary inspection. Now, it depends where you're coming to a port of entry, but if it's a land port of entry, then they send you over to drive over to the side. If it's at an airport, there's a secondary inspection office. It's the office behind the booth. So when you come in and you see CBP officers standing at the counter, basically saying, okay, what are you here for? How long are you there? All that kind of thing. They'll send you over to secondary inspection. At secondary inspection, they'll ask you to sit down. As they look you up, they may go through your documentation. Now, at that point, they could start looking at you and your social media and things of the sort. In fact, they sometimes do. And if you're going in and you say, I'm whatever, Mary Smith, then they'll look for Mary Smith and see what you've said or what you've written or things about you. If they Google you or they go on LinkedIn or something of the sort. When they, I guess, investigate, what they'll do is they'll come to you and say, all right, well, Mary, what have you been doing here? Where do you go to school? What is your, again, they'll ask the questions that we talked about before. Do you belong to any organizations? I see you said this on this date. What do you think of that? I mean, they can ask anything they like. Can we see your phone, please? Now, it's my thought on that, by the way, that if they ask to look through your phone and you are amenable to them looking at your phone, then I would unlock it. I don't necessarily know I'd give my code away, but I'd certainly unlock it and then give it to them. All that being said, they can seize your electronic items if they want to. They have that authority. And they can also not let you in. They have that authority. If you don't acquiesce, or if you're not cooperative, then they can basically say, listen, we're not letting you in. Tough. It's too bad. They can do one of three things. They can expedite remove you, which is a very bad thing because it's a bar to the United States, or they could let you withdraw your application for entry, in which case you leave. In either event, obviously the bar is bad, but if they let you withdraw your application for entry, even though you're not barred, you're in the system. So it may make it difficult next time you want to go in.
There you go, friends. Try not to, create any sort of suspicion ever. And thank you, David, for taking this up as well. So, moving on, I have more questions. But
Mm-hmm.
before that, I would like to tell folks out there you can keep commenting, you can ask your questions, and we are going to address to them very, very soon. So, you can comment wherever you're watching. We are live right now on YouTube, LinkedIn, X, and also on Instagram. So do not forget to also subscribe to our channel. Our handle is at Immigration Talk Show. So that's it. Thank you, David, once again for joining us. In fact, you can also contact attorney David Garson, and That you can do by, emailing him as well. Sometimes, you have your questions, you don't want to ask it here so publicly. You can leave him a message or email him at david@garsonil.com.
Yep.
Yes. So, David, another question I have for you is, if students are required, to answer every single question that's asked by border officers, or are there limits to what they can be asked?
I mean, you would think so. I'm trying to answer this in a way. I don't know that an officer would ask a question that would be in a term inappropriate, or they shouldn't. And I think there's an ethical obligation that an officer has. And, it's a tough job to be a CBP officer. It is. I appreciate the fact that there's a lot of discussion on this. And Lord knows I see both sides. But it is a tough job. I don't know that an officer would ask a question that would be perceived to be, I'm putting this in quotes, inappropriate. I think that the questions they will ask will lend itself to, are you admissible to the United States? Are you a danger to people or to the US? Have you done things that would make you inadmissible? Now, in terms of where the line is there, I guess everyone has their limits, or everyone has their ability to decide what they want to answer and what they don't. I was talking to someone who was telling me that they have a visa to get to the United States. And when they came into the US, the officer was asking lots of questions, and they answered the questions. And the officer basically was saying, well, why can't an American do what you're doing? This was not a student visa. And the person said, well, I don't know. I got a visa so I could do this. And I suppose it would be up to whoever made the decision to give me the visa to answer that question, which was a good answer, I think. But I think the way they said it, too, was a very, in a very practical, forthright way. I think it goes without saying, but an officer will also give back what they get. So if you're going in there and you create an attitude, then you're going to get a lot of attitude back. If you are polite, then they may not be polite back. I can't say they would be, but they're more likely to be polite in that regard. So when you say answer every single question, you can, if a question you don't think is appropriate, you can ask in a appropriate way. Well, I'm sorry, I don't understand. I'm trying to come in as a student. How does that relate? You know what I mean? In the sense of creating a situation that you can address the question and query it, meaning you could ask for clarification. You can be as careful as you can. That being said, again, you don't have a lot of wiggle room or rights in this regard at a port of entry. You just don't. And there's no magic bullet here that I can say, but you quote this section of the law or this case and they have to back up. That's just not the case.
There you go. Yes, I think sometimes we may not have the answers, and we don't understand. And is there anything like right to remain silent or anything as such, David?
I mean, you can certainly do that. They can't force you to answer questions, but again, that will go towards you being able to get in.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? You're talking about, you take the Fifth, which is a part of the U.S. Constitution under the Fifth Amendment. But at the same time, you as a non-immigrant, again, you really don't have constitutional rights in the United States.
Okay. Right. And especially at the entrance, I guess, in the airport or
Oh
anything as
yeah,
such.
yeah.
Right. Thank you. Thank you, David, for taking that up. And we have Drive 10. Hi, Drive. Thank you so much for joining us on YouTube. So let's take up his question. I am an international student and I'm planning to travel to India for a short trip.
hmm
But I've been hearing about students being stopped or even sent back at the airport when they return to the US. What kind of legal protections do I actually have at the border if something like that happens to me?
You have to be able to, as I said, you self-assess and you try to be as fulsome as possible with the documentation that you have and the information that you have. So, for instance, if you're coming to the port of entry and you've gone to India, you're coming back, and you have all your documentation in order, I would probably have further documentation. In other words, when you got the student visa, you had to show evidence of your ties to India, right? You showed evidence that you had family there. You had showed evidence that you had financial ability to pay and the financial ability to support yourself. So I would actually have with you, you don't necessarily have to present it unless they ask for it. I would have copies of the information that you first submitted at the consulate to get the student visa, just to show that, yeah, no, everything is the same, and I have this. Also, if you're attending school and you're going home, where are we here? I guess we're coming to the end of the year. So if you have your next semester and you are registered in courses, I would have proof of that. I would have copies if you've gotten your marks from your previous semester. I would have proof of that, showing that you've attended school and that you've completed the courses you were supposed to complete. And if you if you're staying in an apartment or a house and you have a lease, I'd have a copy of that. So I guess my point is that it's sort of a package of documentation that you may want to bring with you just in case, because if they're going to deny people entry at the airport, they're going to tell them why, right? They're going to say you did this, or you were there, or the like, or we don't believe you're attending school, or we don't believe you're going back to school. But if you show at least as much as you can that this is what you're doing, you are here to go to school, you have gone to school, and you're going to go to school, and you can support yourself, you have somewhere to live temporarily, then that could address a lot of the questions.
Right, right. Thank you so much, Drive 10, for joining us with your question. And thank you, David, for addressing this. So, coming back to our questions, if you could also talk about the important documents these international students should always carry, especially when entering the US to avoid any sort of problems.
Yeah, I mean, I think in terms of when you say always carry, you should always carry the documentation that you are a student, meaning you have the electronic. You should download a copy of the I-94 card. If they didn't give you the paper copy, you should have a copy of the I-20. You should have, as I said, if you're going to the school, you should absolutely have information that you're attending. If you're leaving the US, everything I just talked about, you should have with you, just because. Okay, if you come back just without any kind of real proof of anything else, then I think that you could invite more questions. They could say, well, how do I know you're going to school? Well, here, I have this. So you have somewhere. How do I know you can support yourself? Well, here. And shows you have ties at home. What were you doing? And be prepared to answer questions. I mean, I think that's the case. I mean, if somebody asks you a question, be prepared to answer the question. What are they going to ask you? What are they concerned about? This goes back to our self-assessment. They're concerned that you are coming to the United States to do what you said you're going to do. You're going to go to school. Show proof you're going to go to school. Show proof you've been in school. What if you belong to clubs? My advice, join clubs like the chess club. Okay? Join the yearbook. Don't join organizations that would be considered to be problematic organizations. And I think that if you're quite plainly, if you're smart enough to get a study permit, a student visa to go to school in the US, you can figure that out. You should know that, there are organizations that may not help you with regard to your US activities or your US student visa. And yes, I appreciate the fact that if you were a US citizen or you were a green card holder, you could do certain things. Sure, but you're not. So keep that in mind.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, David, for making that clear. And when you talk about studying in the US, I mean, whether it's just academia or so many co curricular activities that you need your grades on, it's going to really keep you so busy. I don't know how do people make time for any other things. Well, um, anyway, we got Kritika also who joined us. Hi, Kritika. Thank you for joining us on YouTube. So let's take up a comment. I came here on a B1 visa that was valid for 6 months, and I ended up staying 8 months due to a medical emergency. I didn't
Mhm.
file any extension. Am I already in trouble? And is this $998 per day something I could actually be charged now? I think
I'm
this is
not
a
sure
newer
about the
one.
$998 per day, but in terms of in trouble, you overstayed. Unfortunately, you did overstay your visa. Yes. I would leave immediately, to be quite honest with you. I would not stay longer. Being out of status in the United States is never a good plan, especially now.
Yes.
So this isn't something you should play with. In that regard. And I'm sorry, I don't know what the $998 per day is.
Yes, actually. And Kritika, I understand it was a medical emergency, but I mean, it's crossed over 2 months. I really hope that you were not in a situation where you couldn't have informed. So if you were, it's going to maybe backfire at you again. So, but I hope that you're fine now, Kritika. Thank you so much for joining us with your question and all the best. Let's go on to our next question. And if you can tell us, can border officers go through a student's phone or laptop? We've already discussed this. If that happens, what can the student do? I mean, unlocking the phone and giving it to the officer. But yes, tell us more.
Yeah, I just and just to go back on Critica's, uh, I lost you here for a minute. I'm sorry, I'm trying to find you. Do you see
No
me?
problem.
Or,
Yes, we can.
oh, okay. Going back to, yeah, all right. Going back to Critica's question too, the longer you stay, the worse it is. And if you get to that 180 days, it's a 3-year ban. So, you know, leave. That's the best advice I can give there. Now, sorry, in terms of what can they go through your phone? Absolutely, they can go through your phone. Yes. They can go through it. I mean, if you go to a port of entry and they say, I want to go through your phone or go through your computer, yes, they can do that. They can look through it. Now, you can, if you don't give them the access code and you refuse to open it, then they have 2 or 3 options. The first is they can say, fine, they can stop you from going into the United States and turn you around. The second is they can let you in, but seize your phone and give you a receipt for the phone so that they can go through it. Or 3, they can let you in. Now, I don't know that the third option is going to be very likely, but they can absolutely do that.
Okay. Thank you, David, for taking that up as well. And now, if you can also tell us if a student is told that their visa is being cancelled at the airport, do
Mhm.
they have any right to ask for help or talk to someone before they are sent back?
They can ask for clarification, or they could ask to call an emergency contact or something of the sort. They don't have a right per se. They can ask to speak to a friend, or they can ask to speak to a lawyer. But I don't know that they'd be given the right to do that. If they're going to be canceled at the airport, they would have to be told why. I mean, they're going to be canceled at the. They
Okay.
normally would be told. There'd probably be an affidavit that they would have to sign. They'd be asked questions. It's an
Mm,
there'd be an interview with regard to what's going on, what they said, and then the officer would say, I am not letting you in, or I am canceling your visa under this section of the act. So if
mm.
that occurs, then they can ask for further clarification or to let someone know, or for any kind of I guess kindness the officer wants to show. But there's no right to any kind of appeal to a court or to a
Okay.
tribunal right there. No.
Okay. So that was just leading me to the next question, but probably it's going to be invalid because if someone is denied entry, and can they really challenge the decision, or is it like the final right there at the airport?
Well, it's pretty final at the airport. Let's put it that way. I mean, if you're at the airport, there's administrative appeals when you're within the United States. I don't claim to be an expert on when you're in the sense that and what appeals you have through courts and administrative bodies when you're in the United States. But at the airport, there's not a lot that can be done for you. If they're going to refuse you, they refuse you and they send you back.
There you go. Okay. Thank you so much, David. I know these answers are not very hopeful, but it's
No,
better to know than
I
to
mean, but
now.
we are delving into the worst case scenarios here too,
Yeah.
and I appreciate why we're doing it, and that's absolutely fine. It's just that I think we do have to note that this is what happens if you're in that position. Okay, if
Mhm.
you're in the position at the port where things are going south, then I think you have to be in a position, or as I say, try to have the presence around you to figure out, okay, what can I do or say to this officer that would make a difference for me? Meaning, even in a common sense, practical way, what can be done that helps me in this situation? Because if I try to be overly hostile, it's wrong. If I try to get overly nervous and so I can't speak and it becomes sort of, I get hysterical, that's wrong. That's not going to help you. I think the best thing you can do is to try to keep your wits about you and me, if I'm there, and understand what is going wrong and what I can do to try to remedy it. It always helps. I keep going back to this, and I'm sorry, and I know I'm being repetitive, but it always helps to sort of be on the side of the angels, meaning be on the side where, okay, look, I haven't done anything wrong. I haven't said or belonged to organization. I haven't said anything that's going to be construed to be problematic, and I don't belong to organizations that the US is concerned about. So why am I having a problem? Okay, because if you start in that premise where you are involved or saying things or doing stuff, then right away you're starting on the wrong foot, right on your back foot, and that could be an issue.
Okay. So I think you really, really need to consult with an attorney, because right now, you may think that it's going to be okay to speak of few things, but I think it's best to know what to speak, what not to address, and yeah, how to stay compliant and safe. It's most important to play safe at this moment. So thank you so much, David. And yes, folks, you can also contact attorney David, and that you can do by emailing him. And his email address is david@garsonil.com. And go visit www.garsonil.com. So, David, we do have more folks who have joined us with their questions. So let's take up. This is Sonia. Sonia is asking, I'm still in the US on an H-1B, but my I-94 expired 20 days ago while my employer is working on an extension. Can I still fix this without leaving the country, or does this situation now count as an overstay?
I mean, after your H1 expires, normally you can remain in the US for a maximum of 60 days or until the authorized validity period. But if it's expired, I mean, realistically speaking, there's not much you're going to do. I mean, in the sense of staying there that I can think of. I mean, I guess the question is that why you didn't make an application to change status while you were still in H1 status, even to B status as a visitor, in that regard. I think that, and then try to change status back. In other words, just there's opportunity to submit documentation when you're in a certain status in the United States to help you. If you're outside, if you've expired, then chances are you're going to have to leave and go get a visa from a consulate. So your employer would have to get an approval, but then that goes into the cap too. If it's not an extension, then you may be subject to the H1 cap, and then you may have to leave. If you get it, you then can go and get a new H1 visa, but the extension itself may not be possible.
Okay. All the best, Sonia, and I hope you figure out. And I think it's best to be safe, stay safe. And let's go on to our next question from Sony. Thank you, Sony, for joining us. Sony was there on our previous show as well. Thank you. Good to see you back again with another question. So, saying, my parents are coming to US in B1 visa for a visit. How long can they stay here without issue, and what documents do they need with them while traveling? Do they need to carry passport all the time while traveling?
So, I mean, as you probably know, if they're coming to the United States on a B1 visa, once they come to the port of entry, they're granted, normally it's 6 months. Normally they get 6 months, meaning it goes into the system unless they do it differently. So you can, first of all, go on the USCIS website under My I-94 and check the status time you were given. So if you come to the port of entry and they let you in, then you can go on the USCIS website and check, okay, I was given status until whatever day I'm given status to. So then you'll know what the length of time is. The second thing is, as you probably heard, if you're going to stay longer than 30 days, then you have to register. Actually, no, if you're coming by airport and through, then you're given the I-94, so that should be fine. So there's no need for that. Secondly, when you come to the port of entry and they're asking, what are you doing? I would make sure they have their return ticket. So it shows when they're going back. If they're staying with you, they may want to have a letter from you saying they're going to be staying with me for this period of time. They're my parents. I'm in the US in this status. They're visiting me. If they're coming here, they should have, if you're, just have it with them. They don't have to present it unless they're asked to present it. But if they work, they should have proof that they're employed. If they live somewhere, proof that they have a house, in that sense. So if they're coming to the United States and they're going to the port, and the port's saying, okay, well, why are you here? They're here to visit their child, and this is where they're staying. This is how long they're staying for. This is their return ticket. This is what they're going back to. Again, I think you want to bring copies of the documentation that you use to get the visa itself to begin with, and have it with you. You don't necessarily have to present it to them. If you can pick them up at the airport, maybe a good idea to show up at the airport and pick them up. But what they want to know when you come to a port of entry is that you're here for a temporary period. You can pay for yourself when you're here. You're not going to do anything. You're going to work without status or anything like that. And you have means to go home and a way to go home. So that's what they're going to look at.
Yes, and I think what has lately become very important is also your return ticket. So this
Mm-hmm.
is something that you might want to have it with you, even when you're entering the US. Your the proof that you're actually going to go back on that date. So
Yep.
yes, Somi, thank you for your question. Thank you for participating. And we have Rahul. Hi, Rahul. Thank you for joining us on YouTube. Saying, I have heard that American Civil Liberties Union offers resources and guidance on immigrants' rights and can provide assistance if you're facing issues related to your immigration status. How reliable is this?
Sure. No, you can, but you're not going to be able to avail of that when you're at a port of entry. I mean, when you're at a port of entry, they're not going to, it's not going to be very helpful. But if you're in the United States and you're facing issues with regard to your immigration status, you can absolutely avail yourself of the American Civil Liberties resources. You could also avail yourself of other immigration attorneys' resources, meaning if you're in the U.S. I have a unique type of practice in the sense that because I sit in Toronto, so we do a lot of border work. So I've been doing a lot of media myself with regard to the border and what happens at the border, because that's a lot of what I see. But let's say you're going to school in Oklahoma, or Texas or Florida, and you're running into problems there in those states, then yes, you can avail yourself of the resources of the American Civil Liberties Association. But also, there's many fine lawyers in those areas that can probably help you as well. If there's something to be appealed, if there's some way to sort of attack the problem. I think that, and it wouldn't be I mean, obviously, it's not me. It's people who are there on the ground, who you can see, who can give you a lay of the land. What I believe is that if, for instance, you are told to self-deport, or there's issues with regard to your status, then the first stop you should go to is somebody that knows what they're doing and what they're talking about. It's easy to go online. It's easy to go on Quora or Reddit or something and ask questions, but you don't know who's answering those questions. If you can afford it, then you should see someone who can assist you and give you reliable information.
Very true. And it's best to consult with an immigration attorney and have one personal one for yourself always, because they will know your case in and out. They know where you were born, what you're doing, what you need to do, what your status is, and everything. So, yes, and in fact, if you need an attorney, especially if you're in Canada or the US, or you keep shuffling in these two countries, then why not contact Attorney David? Also, Attorney David Garson is going to be available on email, and you can email him at david@garsonil.com and go visit www.garsonil.com to get to know more about immigration attorney David Garson. So, well, David, we do have some more people who have asked their questions on our YouTube channel. So I would like to address to them as well quickly
Okay.
because I feel like they are a little related to our show right now. So this is like, I'm a business owner from Canada. Do you think I can self petition and apply for L1A?
So if you're a business owner in Canada and you have a company in Canada and then you want to establish a business in the United States, you can look at it it's called a startup L1, meaning you're starting up a business and you're transferring there. That being said, you can't be well, you can, but it'd be a very difficult L1 if you're the only employee, right? So in other words, if you can't, let's say I have a small business in Canada, I'm the only employer, myself and my spouse are the only employees, and I'm going to establish in the US, and then do a startup L1 there. It's possible theoretically, but I would look at it, if you came to me, I would look at it and say, well, how strong is this case? Because I don't know it would be especially strong, because they want to know that both companies are still going to be operating, that the Canadian company can support the US company. In those types of situations, you need a business plan. So I guess in answer to your question, yes, it's possible. That being said, the conditions and the criteria have to be met, and it has to be somewhat clear and precise.
Thank you, David, for taking that up. And folks out there, don't forget to subscribe to our channel, especially if you're resonating with all our content and what information Attorney David is here to give out to. I mean, it's very, very interesting so far. Been discussing from a different point of view, I would say also. So, yes, subscribe. Our handle is at Immigration Talk Show. And also check us out. We are not just on YouTube, but also on LinkedIn, Facebook, X, and on Instagram. Connect with us. Let's go on to our next one. This is from Status saying, ma'am, F1 visa refusal slots open or not?
I'm
That's
not
the
sure I
question.
understand the question.
Is F1 visa refusal slots open or not?
Sorry, what do you
The-
mean F1 visa refusal slots open or not? If
exactly.
you're
Looking.
refused an F1, if you're refused an F1, then it's, you can reapply. If that's what you're asking, if you can reapply for the F1, yes. But frankly, if there's not a lot of documentation that's different, it would be a pretty tough application. So I don't know how that would go.
Yes. But thank you, David, for taking that up. Now we have Paulo asking, when you apply as an international student in Canada, you are required to write a letter stating you will return to your country once you complete your studies.
Hmm.
That was the agreement they signed. Is that true, David? What do you want to say on this?
Yeah, there's a temporary intent requirement. I'm not sure if they're referring to immigration to Canada or immigration to the United States, but there is a temporary intent requirement. And when you're making application for an F1 visa to the US, or a student visa, a study permit to Canada, you're absolutely saying that you will return to your home country. Where that became, if we're talking Canadian immigration, where that became, I guess you could say, almost hypocritical, is the fact that a lot of Canada's immigrants came from the student population. So while you had to say that and prove that, at the same time, you could still enter the express entry pool to apply for permanent residence and everything of the sort. So it was odd. You're saying I'm going to go home, but at the same time, I'm applying for permanent residence. And in the US, it's kind of similar, right? I mean, you have to prove temporary intent when you apply for the F1, and then you do the OPT. And if you are in the STEM field, you have a longer term OPT, but then your employer, is trying to get you an H1, and then from the H1, possibly labor cert and then perm. So while you, again, the dichotomy, or the separation, is interesting. You're proving temporary intent because that's what you have to do. And at the same time, a lot of the immigrant population is taken from students who have had to prove temporary intent.
Okay. Well, that's interesting. And thank you so much, Paulo, for your question, and also David for taking that up. And we got this one from Shreya. Quick question. What would be the RFE for someone who's working on job duties? Isn't much related to their master's degree. Would that be a specialty occupation? And my company gives very detailed job duties, roles, responsibilities, qualifications, etc. The only issue is my master's degree in information systems, MS, with data SC courses, and job in network engineering. However, I have STEM OPT Indian work experience for 2 years, BTech in CSC approved. So, and
I,
is specialty occupation is judging the role by company or the candidate who's applying? Seems like USCIS judges the role rather than the candidates.
well, for this, I'm assuming you're talking an H1. If we're looking at that, then I think that, yeah, they look at both. When you're doing the H1, your degree should be in a closely related field, in the sense that it makes sense that you could do this job and you've been trained to do this job, and it does go to the role as well, with regard to the duties and responsibilities of what is something that is clearly professional in a specialty occupation. So I mean, in terms of what would the RFE, that's a request for evidence, be in that regard? It depends upon what is written in the submission, but the degree should be in a field that is related to what you're doing, and the role itself should be in a field that's related to the degree or something that they're satisfied you can undertake.
Okay, okay. Thank you so much, David, for taking that up for Shreya. And Shreya, thank you once again for your question. And I think we have taken up our YouTube questions with that. So thank you, David. I still have more questions, so probably I'll quickly address to them since we are running short of time. So if you can tell us, can issues with a student's CVIS record,
Mhm.
like it was just fixed or was recently terminated, is it going to affect their chances of getting back into the US?
Oh, sure. I mean, yes. I mean, if your CVIS record is terminated, then you you need to get a new CVIS. If it's terminated by the school. There may be a reason for it being terminated by the schools, for whatever it is. But you should probably appeal that with the school, or see if you can get a new CVIS, meaning a new acceptance with another institution. And then if you can get that, then you may or may not have to apply for a new visa, depending upon the expiry of your current visa. But yes, if your CVIS has expired, then or has been terminated, you need a new CVIS, and you have to go back to the school to try to appeal that, or go to another school to try to get a new CVIS.
Okay. Thank you, David. Thank you for taking that up as well. And folks out there, I hope you're resonating. Do not forget to subscribe to our channel. It's at Immigration Talk Show. So, David, maybe I think what we could help out folks out there watching us, especially if they're students, what steps should students take before flying back into the US, to really make sure that they do not run into legal trouble at the border?
I mean, to wrap up, I think that we have to go back to where we started with, and that is we self-assess. We determine what we've done, what could be our issues, where the problems could be. From that self-assessment, we then try to address what we think our weaknesses in when we're coming back. The best advice is not to do anything that would get you in trouble. It sounds trite and obvious and maybe a bit ridiculous, but understand, the climate, what's going on, what is expected of you and what your responsibilities are. It's just that, okay? Unless you want to be a martyr, unless you want to be an advocate in a certain situation that may not get you very far, then perhaps you have to consider what is expected and what you need to do. It's harsh. It's a harsh statement, and I appreciate that. And I appreciate the fact that we talk about individual rights, and we talk about our ability to speak freely, and our ability to be who we are. All good, but there's an old saying: "Do you want to die on this hill?" I mean, that's it's, you don't want to be a person that ends up making a point but having your visa canceled. So I guess the first thing is you self-assess. You do what you're supposed to do as best you can. Now, that isn't to say that you couldn't have issues even when you do what you're supposed to do, but I think the chances of you getting into trouble are a lot less. I think you have the documentation with you that you're supposed to have, including, as I said, a copy of the application that you applied for with your F1, so that you have it on you in case there are questions. And in the end, I mean, you try to keep your wits about you, answer questions truthfully, transparently, and address the questions that the officer asks. So it's their job to ask you questions, and they're good at it. Let them ask you the questions. Answer those questions. Don't answer questions that aren't asked when you're at the port.
Exactly. Everybody's doing their job. And I think if you're going to be here in the US, you should also just come here and do your job. So thank you so much, David, for this really amazing and informative session, for so patiently taking up each of our questions, answering to them, and it was really lovely having you back here with us. I mean, this was our first show this year, so it was wonderful having you once again.
Pleasure being here. Thank you for having me, and be well.
You too, David. Thank you once
Thank
again.
you.
Folks out there, you can contact attorney David Garson, and that you can do by emailing him. His email address is david at garsonil.com, and you can also go visit www.garsonil.com to get to know more about attorney David Garson and the law offices of Garson. So thank you so much, David, once again. It was lovely having you. Such an honor and a pleasure. And I'm looking forward to having you back again soon.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here.
Thank you, folks. Thank you for joining us. Do
Bye-bye.
not forget to subscribe. Bye bye, David. And our handle is at Immigration Talk Show. Subscribe to our channel, hit that bell icon so that whenever we have these webinars, you're notified and you can join in by asking your questions or sharing our content, because there's so much people can benefit from all these amazing webinars we have, because they're very informative and they're free. So subscribe. I would say it's free of cost, and just be so let's support each other, I would say. So check us out not just on YouTube but also on LinkedIn, Facebook, X, and on Instagram as well. On X, we are at IMI Talk Show. That's our handle, but everywhere else we are at Immigration Talk Show. So check us out. Also, friends, you can message me or call me on my number. My number is 408-335-6444. This is also my WhatsApp number. So, in case you have any questions which we can address to our attorneys and guests who join us, feel free to leave your questions on messages. I will definitely check each one of them and, yes, addressed to them. Also, you can email me at nipa@staffingly.com. And once again, stay with us because we have another very interesting session lined up just after less than an hour at 4 p.m. Eastern Time. I and my co host Sam are going to be back again with Daily Immigration Dose, where we're going to have another very interesting session, I would say. So stay with us. And until then, of course, keep enjoying your day and check our space out at Immigration Talk Show. Bye for now.